Science, engineering, business. I paused. Fields Harold worked in. Laura nodded approvingly. That's straightforward to administer. She wrote a few more notes. What's the second pillar, small business grants? She raised an eyebrow. How much? $20,000 each. Her pen stopped briefly. No interest, I added. No repayment required. What's the condition? They hire locally, I said. Laura nodded. We can structure those as conditional forgivable loans. That protects the foundation while encouraging growth. She looked back up. And the third pillar? I leaned back in the chair for a moment. Cancer support. The room went quiet. Harold fought cancer for 18 months, I said quietly. I watched the bills pile up. Treatments, medications, travel to specialists. I shook my head. A lot of families can't afford that fight. Laura's expression softened. So, you want to help cover medical costs, medical bills, travel, lodging for families who need to stay near treatment centers. She nodded slowly. That will require hospital partnerships and verification systems. Then let's build them, I said. She smiled faintly. That's what you're paying me for? Right, exactly. She flipped to a fresh page. What's the seed funding? $1 million to start. Helen leaned forward slightly. Sam, she said, with your quarterly royalties, you'll likely add another $10 million to the foundation within 2 years. Good, I said simply. Then we can help more people. Laura closed her notebook. One last question. What's the foundation called? I didn't even hesitate. The Harold Caldwell Rutherford Foundation. April 12th, 2025. The Osage County Community Center was packed. At least 150 people filled the folding chairs, students, parents, teachers, local business owners. A large banner stretched across the stage. Harold Caldwell Rutherford Foundation, First Annual Scholarship Awards. Backstage. I stood with my hands in my pockets, peering through the curtain. 50 students sat in the front rows. 50 teenagers wearing their best clothes, nervous, hopeful, excited. 50 young people who had applied for scholarships. And today every one of them would receive $5,000. Helen touched my arm. You ready? I nodded. Yeah. I walked out onto the stage. The room quieted almost instantly. I stood behind the podium and looked out at the audience, young faces full of possibility, parents, gripping cameras, teachers smiling proudly. My name is Sam Rutherford, I began. Most of you don't know me, but many of you knew my wife Harold. I paused. She grew up 20 miles from here. She worked in these oil fields for 40 years. She built a company that employed hundreds of people, and she never forgot where she came from. I gripped the edge of the podium. Harold believed something very simple, I continued. Wealth isn't what you keep, it's what you give away. The room was silent. She believed in second chances, I said, in hard work, in helping people who just need a little push to get started. I glanced down at my notes, then looked back up. Today we're awarding 50 scholarships, $5,000 each. That's $250,000 total. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. It won't pay for everything I said, but it's a start. I smiled slightly. And here's the only thing I ask in return. Make her proud, study hard, work hard, and when you reach your destination, remember where you came from. Help the next kid who needs a chance. The room erupted into applause. I stepped back while Helen began calling the names. One by one, the students walked across the stage. Some smiled nervously, some cried. One young man shook my hand so hard my shoulder nearly popped. Another girl hugged me so tightly I almost lost my balance. The final name Helen called was Emily Thatcher. She walked onto the stage, slowly, hands trembling slightly. 18 years old. Dark hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She accepted the envelope and looked up at me. Thank you, Mr. Rutherford, she said softly. I want to study petroleum engineering. She swallowed, like Mrs. Rutherford. I want to be like her. For a moment, I saw Harold again standing beside that first derrick back in 1996, wearing a hard hat and grinning like she'd just discovered gold. I smiled gently. Don't be like me, Emily, I said. Be better. Be like her. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded and walked off the stage. After the ceremony ended, parents crowded around the stage, shaking my hand and thanking me. I smiled. I nodded. I said the right words. But inside my mind, I was somewhere else. I was back in that hospital room, holding Harold's hand, listening to her whisper, "Trust the farm." She had been right. The farm had given me everything. And now, I was giving it back. That night, I stood on the farmhouse porch again. The derrick lights blinked steadily in the distance. Beside me, the yellow rosebush swayed in the evening breeze, fully in bloom, bright as sunlight, even in the fading light. I thought about the 50 students holding their scholarship envelopes, 50 futures that might never have existed without Harold's vision. My eyes filled with tears, the first tears I'd shed since she passed. I whispered softly into the wind, "Harold, this is your legacy." The breeze carried my voice across the fields. The derrick hummed, and for the first time in 2 years, I knew I was finally living the life she had built for me, and making sure it mattered. February 28th, 2026. Dawn. I stood in the rose garden, breath misting in the cold air. 70 years old today. 3 years since Harold passed. The garden had grown. 50 bushes now planted in neat rows along a stone path Earl had helped me lay last summer. At the center stood a wooden bench, simple but sturdy, with a brass plaque bolted to the backrest, Harold's Garden. It was late February. The roses were dormant bare branches dark against the gray sky. But if you looked close, you could see the buds forming tiny green tight as fists. In a month, they'd bloom. Yellow, bright as sunlight. I sat on the bench and looked out at the farm. The derrick stood tall in the east field lights blinking steady. Beyond it, the wheat was winter planted ankle high and green. The farmhouse had a new roof, new windows, a generator that didn't sputter out every third night. The barn had been rebuilt, red paint, straight walls, no rust. 3 years ago, I'd been 70 pounds lighter, homeless sitting in a guest room with an eviction notice and a rusted key. No money. No plan. Just Harold's voice in my head. Trust the farm. Now, the farm was worth $25 million. Oil royalties came in every quarter, $7.5 million a year, steady as clockwork. The foundation had given away $3 million, 150 scholarships, 60 business grants, 200 cancer patients helped with medical bills. I thought about Walter. Last I'd heard through Helen, who still tracked these things, he'd burned through $6 million, $3 million on cryptocurrency schemes that collapsed, $2 million gambling in Vegas, $1 million on a consulting firm that folded after 8 months. Now he was living in Phoenix selling used cars. Jessica had left him. The Southern Hills house had finally sold, but the money was gone. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel anything. Victor Hartman was in federal prison. 15-year sentence. He'd be 85 when he got out. If he got out. I heard footsteps on the gravel path. Earl appeared, thermos in hand. 75 now, moving slower, but still showing up every week. "Morning, Sam." "Morning." He sat beside me, poured coffee into the thermos cap, handed it over. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sky lighten. "Heard from the university," Earl said. "Emily Thatcher is doing real good. Petroleum engineering, top of her class." I nodded. "That's what this is all about. Harold would be proud." "Yeah." Earl finished his coffee, stood. "I'll let you be. Just wanted to check in." "Thanks, Earl." He walked back to his truck engine, rumbling to life gravel, crunching as he drove away. I pulled a pen and a folded piece of paper from my jacket pocket. I'd been carrying it for a week, not sure what to write. Now I knew. I wrote, "Harold, today is February 28th, 2026. 3 years since you left. I'm 70 years old. The farm is thriving. The oil field you found is producing $7.5 million a year. The foundation has helped over 400 people. Walter burned through his inheritance. He's selling used cars in Phoenix. Victor's in prison. They both made their choices. I miss you. I think about you every day. I see you in the yellow roses and the derrick lights and every scholarship check we send out. But I'm okay. I'm better than okay. You made sure of that. You spent 2 years building walls around me, protecting me, planning for this. And it worked. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know what I'm doing with it. I'm living the life you built for me, and I'm making sure it matters. Thank you for everything, for 40 years, for this farm, for believing I could do this. I love you. Sam." I folded the letter, walked back to the farmhouse, and unlocked the trunk. Inside were Harold's letters, the one from the will reading the one from the barn attic, the notes she'd left in folders. I placed my letter on top, closed the lid, and locked it. Then I walked back outside into the garden and watched the sun rise over the wheat fields. 3 years, a lifetime, a beginning. The roses would bloom soon, and I'd be here to see them. February 28th, 2026. I woke at 6 as I had every morning for 3 years. The farmhouse no longer creaked. I'd hired Earl's nephew to shore up the joists last spring. The yellow roses. Harold planted the ones I dug up from the mansion garden and replanted here, were dormant, now their branches bare against the gray sky. But in a few weeks they'd bloom again. They always did. I poured coffee, opened the kitchen window, and heard the low hum of 10 oil derricks across the east field. The sound had become as familiar as my own breathing. 3 years ago, this land had looked worthless, a patch of dirt nobody wanted. Today it was producing enough oil to change lives far beyond these 800 acres, reaching families in 3 states who'd never heard of Osage County or a woman named Harold Rutherford. Harold had left me 3 gifts. The first was the farm itself, a lesson that value isn't always visible on the surface. Sometimes you have to dig deep past the weeds and rust and rot to find what's really there. The second was fortune proof that money without integrity is just paper numbers on a screen that vanish the moment you stop protecting them. The third was purpose, the understanding that legacy isn't built after you die. It's built while you're still breathing, one decision at a time, one life at a time. Walter had received $12 million in cash investments and property. He'd burned through $6 million in 2 years, $3 million on a cryptocurrency scheme that collapsed within 8 months. $2 million gambling in Vegas casinos, where they knew him by name. $1 million on a failed consulting firm that never landed a single client. His wife Jessica left him. Last fall took their dog and moved back to her parents' place in Edmond. Now Walter sells used cars in Phoenix, living in a 1-bedroom apartment he rents month to month, working for a dealership that pays him on commission. Victor Hartman sits in a federal prison in Oklahoma, serving year 3 of a 15-year sentence. His oil empire, the one he'd spent 30 years building, was dissolved by court order. His name, once respected in boardrooms across the Southwest, is mud. His assets were seized, his partnerships dissolved, his reputation destroyed. I feel no anger toward either of them anymore, only gratitude. They'd given me a gift without knowing it. They'd shown me exactly who I didn't want to become. The foundation Harold envisioned is thriving. I live on $60,000 a year, enough for groceries, utilities, and the occasional dinner in Tulsa. The rest, about $7.5 million annually, goes directly to the Harold Caldwell Rutherford Fund. Over the past 3 years, we've awarded scholarships to kids who couldn't afford college-launched small businesses, for families who couldn't get bank loans, and helped families facing cancer treatment costs they couldn't pay. Hundreds of lives have been touched. Thousands more will be in the decades ahead. Yesterday, Earl stopped by with a thermos of his wife's sweet tea. He's 75 now, still sharp as a tack, still checking the fences every morning, like Harold asked him to. He brought news Emily Thatcher, the young woman who'd reminded me so much of Harold at the first scholarship ceremony 2 years ago, was topping her petroleum engineering class at the University of Oklahoma. She'd graduate in 2029. Earl said probably start her own firm within 5 years after that. That's what this is all about, I told him, staring out at the derricks. Earl nodded slowly. Harold knew, he said. She always knew. We sat on the porch in silence for a while, watching the derricks pump in steady rhythm. Do you ever regret it? Earl finally asked. Not forgiving Walter. I thought about that question, turned it over in my mind the way Harold used to turn over rocks looking for fossils. I regret that he made forgiveness impossible, I said. But I don't regret protecting what Harold built. She fought a war I didn't even know was happening. The least I could do was finish it. Earl stood to leave, clapped me on the shoulder with his calloused hand. She picked the right man, he said quietly. That evening, I walked out to the east field as the sun dropped low. Caleb Miller, the drilling foreman, Morrison Energy hired 3 years ago, met me by well number 11, the newest one brought online just last month. We hit 1,200 barrels a day on this one. Sam, he said, grinning wide enough to show the gap in his front teeth. Biggest strike yet. Your wife knew what she was doing. I stared at the black pool shimmering under the floodlights, the oil flowing steady and strong. 1,200 barrels a day. Harold had mapped this exact spot herself, 2 months before she died, marked it on a geological survey with a red circle and the words, "Drill here first." She'd known it was here all along. She'd be proud, Carlos said softly. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was too tight. In the field's northeast corner stands a granite plaque we installed last spring. Harold Caldwell Rutherford, 1959 to 2023. Geologist, visionary, wife. Beneath her name, the words she'd written in her final letter, she trusted the farm, it trusted her back. I knelt in the dirt-brushed dust from the stone with my sleeve, and placed a dried yellow rose at its base, one I'd pressed last summer, between the pages of her old geology textbook. The wind picked up carrying the scent of diesel and soil, and something else I couldn't name. For a moment, I felt her beside me, not in any mystical way, but in the work we'd done together, the lives we'd changed, the legacy we'd built, one scholarship and one well at a time. Tomorrow, I'll drive into Tulsa for the Foundation's quarterly board meeting. We'll review scholarship applications, approve business grants, plan next year's ceremony. Emily Thatcher will probably be there. She volunteers now, mentoring younger students the way Harold once mentored her. Walter will still be in Phoenix selling cars. Victor will still be in prison staring at concrete walls until 2038. And I'll keep waking at 6, walking the garden, checking the wells, writing letters to Harold that no one will ever read but me. 3 years ago, I was 68 homeless and holding a key to a farm I'd never seen. Everyone told me the land was worthless. They were wrong. The farm wasn't the treasure. The fight for it was. And the man Harold loved had learned at last to trust not just the land, but the woman who'd seen what he could not. And the farm had trusted him back. I'm 70 years old now, and when people ask what this family story taught me, I always give the same answer: don't make the mistake I did. Don't wait until a crisis forces you to realize what truly matters. Life has a strange way of revealing truth only when everything seems to be falling apart. And sometimes it's in those darkest moments that a person finally discovers who they really are. What happened in this family story might sound like a dad revenge tale, but the truth is, it was never about revenge. It was about protection. It was about honoring the woman who spent her final years quietly building a shield around me when I didn't even realize I needed one. Some people might call what happened justice, but for me, it was love. And if there's one lesson I can offer, it's this: never let family betrayal turn your heart bitter. Walter chose his path, and I chose mine. The difference is simple. I chose purpose over resentment. The deeper lesson behind this experience is something many people forget. Wealth without integrity is empty. Money is only a tool, never a trophy. What truly defines a person isn't how much they accumulate, but what they choose to do with it. Harold understood that better than anyone. She didn't just leave me land or oil beneath the soil. She left me a direction, a purpose, a way to turn hardship into something meaningful. If there is any kind of dad revenge hidden inside this family story, it's this: when people try to destroy you through family betrayal, the most powerful response isn't anger. It's building something so meaningful, so lasting, that their cruelty eventually fades into irrelevance. Because real victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving that goodness can still grow where bitterness once lived. Scholarships were created, businesses were launched, cancer patients found support when they needed it most. That to me is the true answer to family betrayal. And faith plays its part too. The Lord works in ways we often don't understand at first. Harold's illness once looked like the end of everything, but in truth it became the beginning of something greater. Sometimes all we can do is trust. Trust in God, trust in the people who truly love us, and sometimes even trust in the ground beneath our feet. This story may be ending here, but your story is still being written. Protect the things that matter most. Build something that outlives you. And when life confronts you with betrayal, as it eventually does for many people, remember that you always have a choice. You can choose bitterness, or you can choose purpose. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Now go out and build your own legacy. Make it something that truly matters. And before you leave, I'd really love to hear from you. What would you do if you found yourself in Sam's situation, discovering a hidden future while facing family betrayal from your own child? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing so you won't miss the next one. And just a gentle reminder, while this narrative draws inspiration from real themes like inheritance, oil field fortunes, and personal conflict, some elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this kind of content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better. Either way, thank you for being here and spending this time with me.